Continuing the series of fisting people to death and kicking them in their face to get the loot, today we will be talking about Windwalker Monk with all of the changes, considering that Monk in general has been one of the classes that we covered the least. Now that we also know the tier sets and everything going around, we can actually maybe take a closer look and draw some conclusions as to how the spec will look like in Dragonflight. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more of this content in the future, consider hitting that like and subscribe button and enable those notifications so you can get, all the YouTube stuff. This is not your first rodeo, but it does help the video grow and it does help the channel out, and we would be super grateful if you did those three little things. And without wasting too much of your time, let's actually talk about Windwalker. And if you have seen our Mistweaver video that's been live a couple of days ago, we already talked about the talent tree for the general monk, so we won't stay too long here, but there are like one or two things that we could mention. So first of all, Strength of Spirit was nerfed recently from 200% to 100% extra healing based on missing health. So maybe monks don't get, like massive lay on hands every 10 seconds. Like other priests, other classes I mean, which is probably good considering the amount of defensives that monks have in general. Resonance Fists works now, and it's actually dealing quite a bit of damage. Also on the pre-patch, you could probably see it on all the monks, really slapping it. We might see some nerfs to them, or maybe there's a bug where it procs with this amount of damage, but if anything, it will probably be addressed considering that it does less than a capstone, unless this is intended, in which case, hey, more damage for everybody. As for the Windwalker capstone, which was missing last time we checked Windwalker, we now also have a Windwalker statue. After many years of monks, Windwalkers have been crying that they don't have a statue of their own, and now they have Summoned White Tiger statue, which is kind of okay. It's a 2-minute statue that pulsates damage around it for 30 seconds, and the amount of damage obviously remains to be seen with the tuning. Right now it scales, every pulse wave does 25% of your attack power, and it hits every 2 seconds, so you have a total of 15 waves of AoE damage. The good thing is that it doesn't really seem to be AoE capped, so in big boy, big dungeon, big pools, you might actually get a lot of damage out of this. Fatal Touch was nerfed, and it now reduces the cooldown of Touch of Death by 45 and 90 seconds, down from what it was before 1 and 2 minutes, which, I mean, I guess it's good. It's probably still number tuning. I mean, I don't particularly have a more stronger opinion on this notes. I don't particularly think Touch of Death is an amazing Windwalker playstyle. Windwalker can do a lot of other cooler things, but then again, if this makes it balanced, that's perfectly fine, because we don't want to see Windwalkers oppressively over strong and overpowering everybody, because then we might see bigger nerfs, and we don't want that. Nobody likes nerfs, man, come on. And this kind of covers most of the things that we wanted to discuss about the general talent tree for Windwalker. In the actual spec talent trees, similar to Mistweaver, not a lot of things changed. First of all, Gale Burst was removed. It used to increase Touch of Death's damage by 10% of all the damage done to a target during its duration. So that's, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people were excited about this, but now you just have to say goodbye, make your peace, and move on. Because in its place came Hardened Souls to give your Blackout Kick extra crit chance and crit damage. Because, when you fail to resolve a problem, you just kick harder. Hit Combo is back. It was introduced under Glory of the Dawn, and it leads into Teachings of the Monastery, which is a little questionable, as Hit Combo wants you to use different attacks in a row, and the teachings need you to cast 3 times Tiger Palm in order to benefit from the maximum damage. So this is actually kind of weird. You might know Teachings of the Monastery from Mistweaver. What it does for Windwalker, fairly similar. Tiger Palm causes your next Blackout Kick to strike an additional time, stacking up to 3 times. Blackout Kick has a 15% chance to reset the remaining cooldown of Rising Sun Kick. Now, the way this would work for Mistweaver, which would make a lot more sense, is you would stack Teachings of the Monastery and do one big fat Blackout Kick, potentially followed by a Sun Kick, which worked a little bit more. But considering that, Windwalker doesn't want you to spam the same ability twice in a row, and even more so 3 times in a row, it remains to be seen. I mean, I would be surprised if this would be so strong that you would have to forego your mastery, but having abilities that work counterintuitively to how your spec is designed just don't really feel that great. If is the case that you don't have to cast Blackout Kick really often in your rotation, then you might accumulate a couple of stacks before you end up doing it. So It does add a spin to the rotation. We'll see exactly how this translates once we're in Season 1. Jade Ignition was moved on the left-hand side of the talent tree, which is kind of good because that's, you know, the AoE stuff. So what it does is, when you deal damage to a target with Fists of Fury, you gain a stack of Chi energy up to a maximum of 30 stacks. Using Spinning Crane Kick will cause the enemy to detonate in a Chi explosion, dealing quite a bit of nature damage to all enemies within 8 yards, and the damage is increased by 5% for each stack of Chi energy. So you accumulate a lot of explosive AoE damage. It's kind of weird maybe because it comes down from Inner Peace, which increases your maximum energy by 10. But hey, it's a mechanic that was either the exact same legendary we had in Shadowlands or very similar to it that we tested it that we never actually got to play with. But I love this and I cannot wait to explode in Chi energy and feel like Goku. Dust in the Wind is a new capstone added to Bone Dust Brew instead of the Calculated Strikes, which was a conduit in Shadowlands. And what it actually does is makes Bone Dust Brew radius increase by 50%. I kind of like Calculated Strikes. I don't know how I feel about this. Having an increase in radius of Bone Dust Brew is definitely good when the packs are spread out, but this is a capstone and it feels slightly lackluster as a capstone, since if things are packed, and they usually are, and that's when you would normally have been using your Bone Dust Brew, this is kind of neither here nor there. So I would be surprised if they don't address this in any way in the next couple of months. Maybe not in 10.0, but maybe for 10.1. We will see. Don't quote me on that, or maybe do. Fury of Zuen was updated to reflect the fact that it grants 8% haste when it triggers and no longer gives haste rating, which maybe is just simpler to look at instead of calculating the, you know, haste rating conversion into actual percentage of haste. Phelan Stomp got a new capstone in Pheline Harmony, which is the current Night Fae legendary, and the former capstone Last Emperor's Capacitor was moved in the middle under Zuen's Bond, where not implemented talent had its place, which I guess it's not that bad. It doesn't really have much to do with Zuen, and if you don't know what this is, Chi Spenders increase the damage of your next Crackling Jade Lightning by 100% and reduce the cost by 5%, stacking up 20 times, meaning that it ends up doing 2000% more damage and costing 100% less resources, which means it's free. 2000% more damage sounds like pretty cool, but you do have to remember that the Jade Lightning does pitiful damage. So it's cool as a mechanic. We'll see exactly how that translates into actual numbers. Kiefer Skyreach was renamed to just Skyreach. What it does is makes Tiger Palm now have a 10-yard range and dashes you to the target when used. Tiger Palm also applies an effect which increases your critical strike chance by 50% for 6 seconds on the target, and this effect cannot be applied more than once every 1 minute per target. So this is kind of a cool capstone. It definitely adds a cool mechanic for Tiger Palm that I think we've seen in Torghast, which is the 10-yard charge thing. It's not like Windwalker needed more mobility, but hey, meanwhile, Red Paladin still has the talent 3 points into a very mediocre pony. But all's fair in the world of the Warcraft. And for the Touch of Death playstyle, since we have seen a bunch of talents spread all around, Meridian Strikes was buffed a little from 0.3 second cooldown reduction to a 0.35 second to compensate the nerfs to the Fatal Touch that we talked about earlier. And Forbidden Technique is the new name of Hidden Master's Forbidden Touch, in case you thought this was a new thing. This also affects obviously Touch of Death, and it makes it deal 40% increased damage, and it can be used the second time within 5 seconds before its cooldown is triggered, in case you don't know the previous iteration. It's still a lot to invest in, the Touch of Death playstyle. You have quite a few talents, but it does offer some variety of playstyle, and if the numbers pay out in the end, then who cares? It's all good if the overall is bigger than everybody else's. As for the tier set, the 2-set bonus makes your Fists of Fury increase the damage dealt of the next 2 Rising Sun kicks or Spinning Crane kicks by 30%. And the 4-set further enhances your next 3 Rising Sun kicks or Spinning Crane kicks, and those enhanced kicks increase the damage of your next Fist of Fury by 5%, stacking up to 3 times. So you can actually, you know, get the same benefit a little bit more. This is kind of like a boring kind of 4-set, but hey, it has a little bit of a synergy. And as opposed to other tier sets that we've had for other specs, this is more of an interesting one that you can actually work around and have some procs and play around it. So it's actually not very bad. considering that the overall tier sets are supposed to be a little bit more simple. But this is kind of it, what we have with Windwalker right now, likely to be the spec that we will see on launch, with maybe a couple of tweaks here and there in terms of number tuning. It's still a very fun spec, and spinning crane kick has been particularly amazing for Windwalker in the course of Shadowlands, and now with the addition of talents that we didn't necessarily cover because we talked about them before, stuff like, you know, blackout kick, cleaving lets you get those spinning crane kicks faster, and now with the hopefully upgraded single target damage of Windwalker Monk, maybe we can see more Windwalkers in our raids as well. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Thank you Patreons as well for supporting the content. If you want to check out our Patreon page, which directly supports us as well, you can take a look at the link down in the description below and see all the Patreon goodies that we have. And if you want to support us, we'll be super grateful because it does actually help. Thank you once again. See you next time. Bye-bye. Stay safe. Stay clean. Peace.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.